I'm Danny, and this is the Scream Princess podcast. I'm Danny, and you are watching or listening to the Scream Princess podcast. And I'm here today with director Brad Watson. How are you doing this morning?
I'm very good, thank you. I've got my coffee, so all is good.
You've got your coffee. I've got water this morning in a giant cup. So,
Well, that's because you're healthy and I'm not.
well, I'm not really a coffee person unless it's a Starbucks or something. Like if I'm out and
Right.
about, I will,
Mm.
get a hazelnut or a pumpkin spice latte, obviously depending on what time of year it is. But
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, I don't really drink coffee at home. I'll drink tea, a lot of tea,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
so much coffee. So it's Sunday. We've already had technical hitches this morning on a Sunday morning as we record this. It's always the way, isn't it? But hopefully we are good to go.
Yeah. All seems okay at the moment. So,
All things okay. Well, I was just saying, I actually did a podcast the other week and I didn't realize I couldn't see me on the screen. On my camera, I looked fine. I was moving around. And then when I watched it back in the edit, I was just this frozen person for the whole of the
oh
first
no.
half. And and the
Some sort of
guy,
weird face,
yeah, I mean,
like
luckily
the
the face
frozen
wasn't too
thing.
weird, but the guy didn't tell me. He thought it was just like a glitch his end, so he didn't say
Uh-huh.
anything. So I,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I record in two halves anyway, and I so we will get a little break in the middle, and the second half
Yeah.
worked out okay, but yeah, the
Okay.
first half
That's
was
all right.
not the one. I feel like I
Okay.
need a
Well, I'll
couple
let
of
you know.
cameras for, backup cameras.
Yeah, you need some redundancy. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if there's any glitches my end.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, Brad.
Yeah. Danny.
How did you get into film? Did you always know that you wanted to work in film, or have you had like a string of obscure jobs that somehow led you to where you are now?
Nope, I have always wanted to work in film. That doesn't count out the obscure jobs on the way, but um, I can actually, in hindsight, I can pinpoint the moment, the revelation, as it were, and it was when I was I think I was about 7 years old, and I was and my favorite movies as a 7-year-old, apart from Star Wars, was Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I was obsessed with them, not for any other reason than I was a kid and I just loved all this stuff. But it was then I was about to watch E.T. and my dad pointed out to me that this was made by the same guy who made all those other movies. And
Ah.
suddenly my head exploded. I had this sort of revelation, as it were, this religious experience of at the time as a 7-year-old. I thought, well, that's cool. There must be something about this guy that speaks to me. I'd like, oh, so, and then it also reveals that it's a job, that's a thing.
Mm.
Making movies is something that somebody does. They don't just appear like out of your imagination. And so that clicked with me that okay, this is a career path. Obviously, as a 7-year-old, I wasn't thinking in those sort of terms exactly, but in hindsight, I look back and I go, yeah, yeah, that was kind of the point 0 of my wanting to do this. So from that point on, I wasn't just talking to people about, I was this stupid little kid talking about, Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark and all that stuff. From that point on, I actually started talking about the people who made the movies. So I was into, I was telling people that this guy, Steven Spielberg, I was into the composers who were doing the music.
Mm.
I was into the VFX supervisors who did, the first 10 years that Industrial Light and Magic, well, I could name to you off my head now still the names of the visual effects supervisors for every movie in those
Wow.
first 10 years. And because I just slapped this up. My dad bought me this from my birthday one year. He bought me this a big ILM book, and I just lapped all this stuff up. And we
Mm.
go to the Museum of the Moving Image in London, and all that, which hasn't been there for years, but I still miss it. And so I just started lapping this stuff up, and I just became obsessed and became my life. And obviously, it was just a no-brainer that this was what I wanted to do with my life. So yeah, so from the age of 7, I think, I think I vaguely remember wanting to be a Concorde pilot before that, but
Well, you'd
I
be out of a
wasn't.
job now, so there's no
Exactly,
Concorde
exactly. So,
left.
so I chose the right career path, it
Yes.
seems. And so yeah, so from then, there's never been any other thing that I wanted to do in my life. Now, the route to get there obviously takes you interesting ways,
Yeah.
and I worked in when I left school back in the day. I'm showing my age now. You could leave school at 16, and once you've done your GCSEs, get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. Because but I left school at 16. I wanted to obviously but I was told if you want to get into film school, you're going to have to stay in education for longer because you
Mhm.
need A levels, you need this, that, and the other. I didn't want to do that. For some reason, I just didn't feel that film school was my way there. I just wanted to get into the
Mm.
milieu
You wanted to be
of
doing rather than
I just wanted to be
learning.
doing, yeah.
Yeah.
So by that time, I had also nurtured a love and passion for theatre. So I got on a stage management course as soon as I left school in Guildford, and I went and I did that for a year, and then I worked in theatre for a year, and during that year working in theatre, and I was stage managing fringe shows. I
Mm.
was crewing on big shows. I crewed on Les Mis for a bit. I did all these sort of things, and I loved it. But I was looking at my way into the film industry, and by virtue of the experience I was getting in theatre, it got me onto a training scheme in the film industry. And then I thought, because I'm very visual, I thought I need to get into camera. That's where I need to go. And I did a year working in camera as a camera trainee, and I worked on some great stuff. Um, but and that was invaluable experience in terms of on set work. I don't believe anyone should be directing a movie if they've never worked on a set.
Yeah.
So that gave me that great grounding. But what I discovered was okay. It's I've, I see how you get the shots. I
Mm.
don't know why. So that's why I then changed my vocation to editing, and I became an editing trainee, and then from that I had a 7 year career as an assistant editor, working on all kinds of stuff, and then getting into editing. And then while I did that, I started directing like off my own back, started directing short films, and through that I started getting music video work, and then all the way trying to get the first feature done, which I eventually did. And then you're at that stage of your career, you do a feature, you think, wow, I've done it, and then no one wants to work with you ever again. So you're like, because you make a feature and it goes and it's a little, no
Yeah.
one knows about it. No one, low budget feature films, they just
Hmm.
disappear. So you then have to go, okay, right. So this was just the first part of my journey, actually directing, and now I need to keep directing, and I need to build my career up as a director. And you're like, so then you've got between directing my first movie and my second movie is probably a 4 year uh, 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 gap
Mm.
because you're then trying to get the next movie off the ground. And during that 4 years, because I'd started directing, I kind of stepped out of the editing game. So, and that's a big no-no in the film industry. If you if you got a career and you've got a set career and people are bringing you on to their next one, next on, their next film as an assistant editor and as an editor, if they then call you and you go, oh no, I can't do it this time. The next person goes in and you never get a call again.
Yeah.
It's that harsh. Um, so by the time I'd made I made a decent living out of being an assistant editor. I made good enough money to sort of see me through a little period of
Mm.
making my first movie because of course no one's going to pay me to make my first movie. Um, but then by the time you get into your second movie, that money's gone. So then I'm like, okay, well, I had a successful career in the film industry. I'm now trying to get my next movie going on. I can't go back into that world because I have to commit to it. I need to make money on a kind of fairly flexible basis so I can make keep working on my movie. So that's when I'm now, after 7 years of working as an assistant editor and an editor on big movies, I'm now driving Boots vans and I'm doing all delivery work. I'm
Mm.
baristering, doing all that stuff purely because it's short term and kind of flexible work.
Yeah.
So I could just keep money coming in whilst I'm trying to get the next movie off the ground. Eventually, I did that. did okay. That did all right. Got enough attention on me. Not no money. I didn't make any money out of it, but enough attention on me to throw, to make people aware. And I'm bringing that up for a good reason because this is a very long answer, by the way. But this is
I
just
like
I'm
it.
trying to put
You're making my
my
job really
journey
easy.
into a nutshell. So then, yeah. So my second movie, which was Hallows Eve, that then gets released, in fair a few territories. It got premiered at Fright Fest, did all that. Um, but yeah, but then again, it sort of peters off, goes off without a trace. In the meantime, I'm off the back of that, I'm meeting new producers and new people who aren't necessarily hiring me as a director, but at that point they're like, "Oh, you're an editor." So I started getting more work as an editor again.
Mm,
And I was working for people here, and I was working for people in the States, and I was working, slightly. But through that way, I am then making more connections and stuff and
again.
stuff. I'm then involved in a particular project that I won't name, that was being shot out in Louisiana. And I was working on the editing staff here in the UK, but I was out in Louisiana a few times, just sort of helping the editing process that way. And it was a disaster. It was a
Right.
real disaster. So I was like, there was a certain producer who was out here, who's here in the UK. Who was the executive producer of this project, and I kind of became his uh, I guess for want of a better word, trusted confidant. He could trust me to let him know the reality of what was going on. I wasn't
Mm,
dropping anyone in or doing any of that, but I could just speak. I wasn't going to flim flam. I was telling him exactly what was going on and what I thought needed to happen. He then went, "Wow, okay, you know what you're doing. Would you like to come and direct for me?"
in
So,
Louisiana.
no, back in the
Oh, yeah.
UK. So I did. So I came. He was based up in York at the time,
Mm.
and then the result of that was this movie, Miss Willoughby. Yeah, so that's
I've seen it.
Hallows Eve. Yeah,
I've
you
watched
seen Miss
it.
Willoughby?
Yes.
Yeah. So the result
It's
of
a very up my street movie. Like Brooke Sharp is like, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and that was cool, and that was with Kelsey Grammer,
Mm.
Caroline Quentin, and that, and
I
then
actually didn't realize you directed it when I watched it. I think it was one of
oh
those days I
really?
was scrolling on, it was like, it would have been Prime or Netflix because they're the only two things I have.
Yeah,
And I was like, oh, this is like the perfect kind of movie for me on an afternoon. And
yeah.
then it was only at the end, I was like, Brad directed. I think I text Megan straight away. I was like, I've just watched one of Brad's movies and I loved it.
Oh well, thank you
Super
very much.
exciting when you see like your friend's name, and you just were not
Well,
aware.
especially if you watch the movie not being aware it was them, so
Yeah,
you're not forcing yourself to enjoy
no,
it.
no, so there you go. I
Well,
actually
that's
genuinely enjoyed
yeah.
it.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's exactly what it's designed for, a Sunday afternoon movie. I injected a cinematic style to it, and I
Mm,
really wanted to go there. But yeah, and then since then, I've directed another 9 movies,
mm,
8 or 9 movies, um, uh, all in like the space of the last 3 years.
mm.
So you go from trying, desperately trying to get your next movie done, and it takes 4 years between projects, and then suddenly, boom, you make a ton in a short space of time,
Yeah.
and that's how my career happened. So yeah, so there was a period where I did some random jobs just to keep money coming in
Mm,
after I had already established myself in the industry. And this is a thing that I tell people, and I like telling people that story, mainly because everyone gets caught up in this business, in making it work and earning
mm.
money and all that stuff, which we all want to do. Our dream really is not, most people that I know, our dream isn't to be, for me, when I was 21, I was convinced I was the new Spielberg, but you soon grow out of that and
Mhm.
realize, no, what I want to do is I want to make movies. I want to do what I love, and I just want
Yeah.
to earn enough to live. I want
Yeah.
I want that to be a sustainable career. That's all I'm
Mhm.
after. Unfortunately, the business isn't set up like that.
Mm.
And it hasn't been set up like that for a long time, especially here in the UK. And I tell
Yeah.
people that. I said, for as long as I've been alive, it's not been like that. Don't let people think to you that it's different now or whatever. No, no, it's always been like that. Don't be. It's a roulette wheel. Keep yourself
Mm.
at the table. Whatever you have to do to keep yourself at the table,
Mhm.
do it. And if
And
that
you've got
means
to pay
getting
your
your job
bills.
done,
So you might have
exactly,
to take,
exactly,
it's
you got to
very
pay
few
it.
people that get to do this as a full-time thing.
Very few,
Spielberg, like where
very,
you are
very
earning
few.
so much
Yeah,
money, you don't have to do anything else ever. But
yeah,
everybody else, we've
yeah.
got mortgages, we've got
No,
bills,
no,
and we
absolutely,
might
very
have to
few.
do other stuff.
Why do you think successful directors, TV directors who've done soaps all their life and that are now suddenly doing workshops with people to train?
Yeah.
It's because they need money. It's because it's an inconsistent
And I know
work.
even with actors, like I know when there's been somebody on a soap who was on a soap for years, and then everyone's like, oh, now she's working in a supermarket. But she's a mother with
Yeah,
kids, and so in
exactly,
between jobs,
exactly,
it's better that
exactly.
she works than doesn't work,
Yeah.
doing
So I
something.
think so what I tell people is that that's the reality, and don't be ashamed of that, and don't worry about it.
Mm,
Um, but but yes, sure, play the perception. Did I tell people that I was driving Boots vans while I was? No. As far as I was concerned, I was working on my next script and I
yeah.
was working on my next movie, and I'm trying to get, you play the perception game for sure, but in hindsight now, I realized how important that was for me to make that decision and not get
Mm,
caught up in oh, I've got to get a job in the industry. Well, otherwise, what have I done? Wasted my time. It's like no, no,
yeah.
no, no. Play that you got to play it to your advantage and figure out what it is you need and what you're gonna what can
Mm,
work for you. And then as far as you're concerned, that's all you're doing. That's not what defines you. What defines you is what you talk to people about
mm,
when you go to meetings, when you go to that, when you go and tell them. People had no idea. People thought that I was really successful at the time when I was then putting on a boots thing and going and driving medications to old ladies. People thought that, and this is like 5 or 6 years ago. No, where are we? Yeah, 6 years ago. And so I was doing that whilst trying to get my next movie off the
mm,
ground. And then suddenly, boom, I've had a nice run where yeah, I've
yeah.
been sustaining myself in the business. But it took a while to get there. It took a long
Yeah.
time to get there. It took a long time before anyone actually paid me to direct a movie. I mean
Yeah.
that, my first two movies, no one paid me. I had to raise the money myself, and I could only raise just enough to get everyone else a bit of money and
Mm,
enough for what we needed. I didn't get paid anything. So those sort of sacrifices you kind of have to do, and you kind of just got to suck it up and do it, figure it out. Unfortunately, that's part of the life skill you have to
yeah.
to survive in this business.
Survival. Survival
Yeah,
skills.
yeah, absolutely. But anyway, so that's a brief history of my journey.
So within I mean, you've directed kind of over, a range of genres, but you do tend to do quite a bit of horror. Is that on purpose, or is that's what people are hiring you to do?
It's it's well, it was on purpose at first because the thing about horror, and if you look, a hell of a lot of directors of what we call, or of the old school directors, not
Mm,
what who works in Hollywood now, because they're not directors, they're just names whilst the committee makes the movie. But if you go back to the directors that we all grew up on and that stuff, most of them cut their teeth in horror.
mm,
And there's a reason for that. The reason is horror is the one genre that still to this day that has a way better chance of selling without any named talent attached. That you can sell it on the concept alone. There's no other genre that comes close to horror for being able to do that. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen. In fact, it quite often doesn't. But it's the ratio is there that you can if you get the concept right and advertising your movie right, you don't need to say so and so in. You don't have
mm,
to do that. So it's easier to sell to people. It's easier to sell to financiers. It's easier to sell to sales agents. It's easier to do that way. So there is a pragmatic reason that most people cut their teeth on horror. It's the only thing people give them money to do. Um, and um, but unless you have a love of horror, you're going to be stuck. So,
mm,
and I grew up on those horrors, and I cut, my, Joe Dante, one of my favorite filmmakers, who's mainly known for comedies, but he started with Piranha and The Howling, and
Was that the original Piranha?
the original Piranha, yeah, and the original Piranha he did for Roger Corman because he worked at Roger
Hmm.
Corman, and then The Howling,
We
and
watched it recently, actually, Piranha.
all right, the original
Kind of
Piranha.
keep we're going back watching old movies at the moment.
Right.
We're
Yeah, yeah.
going through a
It's
phase.
hilarious. The main lead in that is hilarious because he's like supposed to be the star, but he's just a useless drunk through the whole movie. I think it's very funny. But yeah, but the uh so yeah, so I grew up on that stuff. My when I was a kid, like American Wealth in London was and still is one of my favorite
Mm.
movies.
Yeah.
And so that kind of genre busting movie where you have a horror and people go to be scared, um, and you deliver on that. As long as you deliver on that, you can then surprise them with other stuff. Like
Mm.
most people didn't like people don't realize it now, but most people when they went into the cinema to watch Miracle Wolf in London back in 1981 had no idea it was funny. They just thought it was a horror. It's a werewolf movie and it's a horror. So as soon as they start finding themselves laughing, like genuinely like it's a proper comedy at this movie, it's surprising to them. And then the scares come and whoa,
Mm.
whoa, and they come out going, wow, I wasn't expecting that. It
Yeah.
delivered on what I was expecting, but it gave me something else. And
And then
that's
that affect the werewolf transformation. Like nobody was expecting that to be
oh,
so
that, yeah,
like
blew everyone
groundbreaking.
away.
Yeah.
Absolutely blew everyone away. And they invented an Oscar category for it.
Mm.
But yeah, so that kind of sort of seminal horror is a thing. I had an old I had have still have an older sister. She's 4 years older than me. So when she was a teenager and I was still a spotty little oink, she would, yeah, her and her friends, they would have sleepovers. They'd all come over and they'd have horror movies. They would rent out horror movies. So I saw, because of my sister, I saw Nightmare on Elm Street. I saw The Entity. I saw The Shining. I saw
Mm.
all these movies because they hide them out, and I would sneak in and watch with them. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And there's just an atmosphere of this is the other thing about horror. So, I'm a cinema guy. I love cinema. I love going to see things in cinema like that. But there's something about that old TV in the corner with a horror movie on, just flickering away, sort of illuminating the
Yeah.
people's faces as they're watching a horror movie. There's just something about that, what the period we grew up where the home video and DVD and all that
Yeah.
brought this stuff into your house, and I think that out of all genres, the horror movie, I think, is more at home in the home than any other.
Mm.
It's like I say, people want to switch the lights off and
Yeah, you can be
turn the
cozy, you've got a
TV.
blanket,
Yeah,
your
get
popcorn in
get
your lap,
cozy
and
and
yeah,
watch it. Yeah. So there's so
cat
there's
curled
so I
up
think
next to you
yeah,
or your dog.
exactly. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I'm always attracted to that kind of those that I have so many memories and
Mm.
nostalgia attached to the memories of what horror movies, how they fit into my pop culture world as I grew up. That's something that I really want to continue. So even though I started off with horror, so I did a couple of horrors, then I tried to I deliberately get away from it, not because I didn't want to do any more horror, but it's like I want to, because what I really want to do is like action and comedy. That's what I really want to do. So
Mm.
I'm so I made an action movie. I did Miss Willoughby, which is like a family mystery thriller movie, and I did that. And I've now done several non-horrors. I did a comedy out in Montenegro last year, and like I said, an action movie in York of all places. Um, and then but now I've started going back in horror. I then got hired to do I'll Play Mother, which is this one here, and that's a psychological
Yeah.
horror, and I'm in post on a movie called Video Killed the Radio Star, which is
That's
a
a
horror.
great title. I was looking through your titles. That's one of the upcoming ones, isn't it? I was like, that's
Yeah, yeah, that's in. Well, the my cut of that is done.
right.
We're just working with the producers now to to implement some notes onto it,
Mm.
and then hopefully that will be ready to come out soon. And I think that's a cool film. I'm quite proud of that. We shot it very quickly, but visually, I think we it's really good. Um, so yeah, so and I find myself, you know, I think I'll probably working because I'm now in development on several movies, and I've got a mystery, a sort of a Knives Out style mystery whodunit film that hopefully is going to go very soon. I've got an action film, cage fighting movie. I've got a few things that are like circling that hopefully going to go. But I'm also working on about four horrors as well.
Mm.
Uh, so there's always horrors. There's always horrors
Yeah.
there ready to go because
It's
I
funny
love
what
it.
you're saying
And
about like horror in the home, because a
yeah,
lot of films that you've watched, you don't remember the first time you've watched it. But I feel like with a lot of horror films, I could tell you who I was watching it with, where I was. Like,
yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's weird you
yeah,
remember those things. With other
yeah.
films, I know I've seen them, but if I've
Yeah.
seen them years and years and years ago, I won't necessarily have
Because
that
yeah, because of
memory.
the unique visceral reaction to watching a horror movie, especially when you're a kid,
Hmm.
that it doesn't leave you. So you remember
Yeah.
the circumstances around
Like
watching.
you'll
Like I
always
say,
remember the
really
first
weird.
one that
Yeah.
scared you. What was the first film that scared you?
Uh So that's a toughie. What was the first film that actually scared me? The the idea of American Werewolf in London scared me until I
Hmm.
saw it, and I enjoyed the horror. But I loved the movie so much as a comedy that it didn't scare me. But it but the horror stuff was real. The I think the movie I think the first movie that kind of freaked me out was a movie called The Entity,
Hmm.
which was 1980, I think, with Barbara Hershey, based on a true
Seen it.
story.
Hmm.
Uh, um,
Yeah.
and and
We believe in ghosts, Brad.
do we? Okay, yeah, we
Yes.
believe in ghosts. It is based on a true account, on
Yeah.
a true,
It's like the
a true
Conjuring
case.
movies. Apparently, the latest one's a bit that people are like, this is meant to be a true story.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the new one yet, so.
well, those I knew about the Warrens before those movies came because
Mm.
I was when I was younger I was well into ghosts and
Well,
things.
of course, they have
I had
The Enfield
yeah,
one. You'd have.
exactly. I had the book of the Enfield Poltergeist when I was a kid,
Mm.
so I knew all about that, and the Warrens were like, what? And suddenly a movie comes out that makes them the heroes of that
Yeah.
story. I'm like, this is I don't think this is quite.
But I
And
do love all of the movies, so I still
yes.
want to
Oh
see
yeah,
them.
they're good. They're really good fun. They're really
Yeah,
good fun. They're
but I
well,
wouldn't take it too seriously.
yeah, no, absolutely. But yes, but I did. So I was well into when I was a kid, I believed in, I loved it. I was like, I was mad about ghosts, and I was,
Yeah, I always say I like
and
the
I was,
idea of them, but I'm yet to
yeah,
be kind of convinced.
no, yeah, exactly. But as I get older, as I got older, I don't, that's gone. I don't buy it, but I'm still fascinated by what it is about that fascinates us, and I haven't
Mm,
let go of that child, the kid in me that loved it, and the kid in me that loves horror movies, and
mm,
the kid in me that was convinced that the entity was a real thing, and that's why it scared the crap out of me. But you then find out that you read into the case and you're like, okay, man, there's other factors here. But that movie, I think it's really well done. It's really
mm,
well if people haven't seen it, do yourself a favor, and it's a little gem of a movie that actually, when you watch it when you're older, the cynicism in the movie about it is that suddenly you realize, okay, these filmmakers because Ron Silver plays a psychiatrist in it, a doctor in it, who
mm,
when I was a kid, he was like the non-believer, and he was the bad guy. Well, not the bad guy, but he was the resistance to her getting the help she needs
mhm.
because when you watch it as now, you're like, no, he's absolutely right, and he's
Yeah.
and he's got a point on everything. And what you realize is, and you realize that the filmmakers, I think, thought that as well, and it so much so that at the end, spoilers, at the end, he's the guy that saves her
Mm,
physically at the end, and you're like, they've suddenly made him the hero. Okay, they're telling me something here. That's interesting. So I think as I watched that movie more and more, my perception of it changed, and I think that's what made me realize that horror movies can be quite deep.
Yeah.
Like not, there can be layers, and it can be telling you something else whilst delivering a horror movie, whilst delivering the scares, and the entity is scary and this unseen force that attacks this woman. It's frightening, and it's relentless. It keeps happening
Yeah.
constantly. Every time you settle down, it's bam, it goes
Do
again.
you
And
think it's scarier that it's kind of unseen rather than having a
yeah,
ghost on screen that you can
oh,
see?
100%, 100%. The unseen nature of the entity in that movie is
Mm.
what terrified me, and that and as far as you were aware, it could always be there. It
Yeah.
could always be around. Um, so that was the first one that truly terrified me. Poltergeist was the other one when I first watched it as a kid, it scared the crap out of
Mm.
me. But as soon as unlike the entity, which remained scary, as
Mm.
soon as I sat through it once, I was like, well, that's just a brilliant movie. I want to watch it again, and
Yeah.
suddenly it's like, oh, this is just a great sort of sort of almost science fiction movie about a family that
Yeah.
and suddenly the perspective of that movie changes. But the first experience of watching that movie, it was scary.
It's funny because
Um,
although I don't necessarily believe 100% in ghosts, I do find supernatural films scare me more than a lot of other types of horror. And
oh
it's,
yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
the suspense and the kind of,
Yes. No, I'm like that. And a lot of people are the other way. They say, well, I don't find the crazy stuff scary, but the realistic stuff is more scary. And
yeah,
they're probably more sane than me and you. They're like, because absolutely you should be more scared of
that's
real
not
things.
hard.
Yeah, but I'm like you. In my imagination,
Yeah,
even now as a science believing sort of
yeah.
a non, like rational explanation for everything human being, that little kid in me, when I'm on my own in the dark watching something, my imagination starts going.
It's
And
like when I go
suddenly
to
I'm
the
like,
toilet at night, I'll still run back
yeah,
to my room.
oh yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what's going to get
absolutely.
me,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
But the one time you don't run, that's when it will get you.
Yes,
So
so
so you
I
might as well keep
run.
running. Yeah,
Run
yeah,
and
yeah.
straight back under the
Yeah.
covers, and then you're safe.
Yeah. So I think and I think that we've hit on something important here that in terms of why I love horror is I think out of most genres, you can argue maybe sci-fi a bit and that, but I don't know, but I think there's something about horror that links you with your childhood so
Mm,
directly because you had all these visceral reactions as a kid, and sometimes that kid that was scared of this stuff sometimes resurfaces in you, no matter how old you are, and
mm,
you're like, and I love it. It's like it's thrilling. And it reminds me. It kind of invigorates me. Reminds me why I do this stupid job that I do. Why I do this. Why I work in this crazy business is for that feeling. It's to
yeah.
it's to invoke that feeling in people, and that's why I'm in it. There are people in this business for way more lofty reasons
Mm,
and intelligent reasons and all that. But for me, it literally is. I want to touch the kid in everyone, find that kid and bring it out, and remind you why when you were a kid, when you saw a movie. It invokes a here. It's like I think everyone you can still do that. You can still do that in everyone, and that's what I want to do, whether it's through horror or action, sci-fi, comedy, or whatever. Invoke that inner child in people. I think that's what I'm after.
thank you. Well, we're out of time for part one now, so
Oh,
I'm going to give you a short break and I'll see you
okay,
back shortly for part two.
okay.
Welcome back to the Screen Princess podcast. So, why is it you think people like to be scared?
Um, it's uh well
Don't you?
it's it's like going on roller coasters, isn't it? It's like doing that. In fact, one of the best uh, verbalizations of this is in a Joe Dante movie called Matinee, where John Goodman plays um, a William Castle type filmmaker who comes to this town in the 60s with his B movie called Mant, half man, half ant, and he makes friends with one of the kids, and the kids helping him, and he's like, and they're discussing things like this, and the Cuban Missile Crisis is going on at the same time. So there's a real world horror going on, and then there's this horror movie that, and he talks about how it's, how people love to get scared. They love to go through the experience of being scared, and just when they're just when they're when all hope is gone, you save them, and he's like, you literally save them by the film ends, the lights come on,
Hmm.
you're back to your normal world. And it's that sort of, I guess it's that exhilaration. It's like, why do I love roller coasters so much? Which I do. I'm a roller coaster nut. And
And you just went
um
to Thorpe Park, didn't you, for
yeah.
your birthday?
Yes,
Yeah.
finally got on the new roller coaster they got. They're huge, biggest one in Europe. It's tremendous. And it's like, why do we get in this thing that's going to hurtle us along at breakneck speed, make us think we're going to die? Why do we do that? And it's the experience is exhilarating because you
Mm.
know that it's not actually, well, it shouldn't be life threatening. Yeah, but it kind of fires all the neurons in you that react to that sort of thing.
Mm.
So it's kind of I guess, where we used to have a horror, we used to live in a horror story, where our lives, when before we became farmers and before agriculture, before all that,
Mm.
we were hiding from predators, we were hiding from all that stuff. So it's that is built in our DNA. And I think that horror movies and roller coasters and the like, and these sort of things, it goes in and it goes in and sort of speaks to that part of us
Mm.
that is still there, but does it in a way that's like, yeah, but don't worry, you're going to make it every single time. You're going to be fine. And that if I think it's to do with that. If I'm going to, have a deep psychological thing about it, I think it just taps into this primal thing that is engraved in us, and that we get a lot of exhilaration from surviving things.
Mm.
So horror movies and other scary things we do, that we really are, we're really not really in danger. Um, Sort of is a healthy way of sort of reactivating that instinct in us, and it's almost become an enjoyment,
Mm.
re releasing these endorphins in us that we don't normally get to use, becomes an entertainment for us. So we love it. Um, so I think it's to do with that.
I didn't
I
realize
don't,
you were an adrenaline junkie as well. Like I like horror movie. I'm not I can go with roller coasters, and I
yeah,
think because I don't like those rides where you just go up and
no,
you sort of stay there for ages and
yeah,
then they drop
no,
you.
no,
I
neither
don't
do
like
I.
rides where
Neither do
you're
I.
upside down
No,
up
no, I have
high.
a fear of heights. I'm
I
not
don't
I
like
don't
heights.
I'm not good with heights. Which is why people think it's mad that I love roller coasters so much.
Well,
But it's
yeah,
like, yeah,
but it's because it's quick, I think.
the
And you
height
kind of
is,
you,
yeah,
you don't really realize you're so high because you're moving all the
yeah,
time.
exactly. It's
And
the height is
I can even the
inconsequential.
loops. I can be upside down for,
Yeah,
quickly,
yeah.
but not, those ones where you're just upside down spinning around and you're like, no.
Yeah, where it holds you upside down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think no,
yeah.
no, I don't
Yeah,
need to
no,
be here.
I like traveling at speed, and I like
Yeah,
that sort of adrenaline of that motion. I don't like the adrenaline of being up high, going, "Hey,
no.
look, the point of this ride is that you're really high." It's like, no, a lot of roller coasters are really high, and yeah, and the scariest part for me is going up the pulley.
I do
But
that bit with my eyes closed and then I open
yeah,
them when you start
I just
moving.
I just fixate on the front of the track, and I just, so I don't have awareness of how high I am. But as
Mm,
soon as as soon as you go over the first dip and the speed kicks in, then
yeah,
I'm
then
my senses are up and I'm looking
it's
everywhere.
okay.
I'm
I don't
loving
let go though. I still hold on like this
it.
for dear life.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes I've been on a few roller coasters recently where I've not done that. I've
I
gone,
feel
I
like
just
I
can't let
don't know.
go.
What if you hit one of the tracks or something? Sometimes it looks like you're quite close and your arm
I
gets
know.
chopped off or something.
Yeah,
So I
I
think I'll try and like stay
know.
safe in my car.
Yeah, but yeah, but it's those sort of endorphins, I guess. And I guess horror does that, and it but it stays with you, and it's
Mm.
interesting. You mentioned, you asked me what was the first movies that made me scared, and I mentioned those movies, but quite early on, I saw what I do consider to be the scariest movie ever made, which is The Shining. And the reason that, and I say that because when I first watched The Shining, it didn't scare me.
Mm,
it was fascinating, and I was old enough to be enthralled by the filmmaking and the use of the camera and the lenses, and I
mm,
was sucked into that. Maybe that's why it didn't scare me because I was admiring the technique so much. But yeah, it was some freaky stuff in it and all that stuff. And but when it ended, I was like, hmm, I don't think that was as scary as some other movies. Then
yeah.
I went to bed that night, and oh my God, I didn't realize how much it gets under your skin. And it's
Mm,
at a later date, that movie, especially when you're in bed, that movie comes back at you, and suddenly, and it was probably the most restless night I've had because of a horror movie ever. And and that hit a chord in me, and so then that was a scare that I'd never experienced from any other movie.
mm,
That's why I consider it the scariest movie. It might be, might not be, it's subjective, but for me, it just hit me in a very different way than most horror movies. I mean, most horror movies are like roller coasters.
yeah.
You're scared for for the duration, and then it's over. Whereas The Shining wasn't. It was completely the opposite. It didn't scare me massively when I first watched it, but then I couldn't get rid of it, and I couldn't get off the roller coaster after that. It was like it wouldn't go away. So, and that I think that's kind of a special kind of scary for me. So yeah, so that definitely had a massive impact on me as well as a kid, and made me start thinking how, because I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker around this time. I
Mm,
was like, so how are they doing that? So I started thinking about the techniques and what they do and what it is that makes these movies affect you that way. And so I started getting into the mechanics of it. And then once you start doing that, you see that, you look for the strings every time you do it. But if a horror movie's working, it doesn't matter how much into the technique you are, if it grabs you and takes it it doesn't matter. You stop, and
yeah.
you just get affected by the movie. And The Shining definitely did that for me.
Would you consider Jaws a horror movie?
Ah,
I mean, I have an irrational fear of sharks because
right.
it's unlikely I'm ever going to get eaten by a shark because I don't go very deep in the sea. I generally live in the UK, so if I'm in the sea here,
Yeah,
they're not here. But I still have this like shark fear, and it's
yeah,
can only be from Jaws.
yeah. I guess yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right.
It's the debate, isn't it? Because a lot of people say it's
Yeah,
not a horror movie, but
yeah.
I would say it is.
I mean, it certainly is, and it certainly was when it came out. It was considered a scary movie.
Mm,
Um, what it is, but some movies transcend genre. So it's like, because to me, Jaws isn't just a horror movie. It isn't just a shark movie. It's one of the greatest movies ever made, and for all kinds of reasons, mainly the skill of the filmmaking, the writing, and the acting, and um, certainly it's like I always regard. When people ask me what my favorite action movie is, I usually say True Lies, James Cameron's True Lies, because I consider that a pure action movie.
mm.
But above that is Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is an action movie, but it transcends that genre because it's
Yeah.
just one of the greatest movies ever made. So it's like it's funny how some movies to me they just go outside of their genre. When I watch Jaws now, it's not a horror movie. It's an adventure movie.
Mm.
It's an adventure movie with a particularly dark first act. Um, and it does have a pretty dark first act, but as soon as Richard Dreyfuss turns up, to me, the movie becomes a comedy. I think it's one of the funniest movies ever made when Richard Dreyfuss turns up, and it's a mash. It's the thing about those kind of, and these are the kind of movies I want to make, is that kind of movie. It's a mashup of genres. So
Mm.
the scares is what affected people the most, and it scared the crap out of people and gave people a fear of the water and fear of sharks and a fear of all that stuff. So it was considered a horror movie. Now, when Spielberg was making it, I don't know if he would consider he was making a horror movie. He certainly was trying to scare people.
Mm.
He was certainly trying to conjure up moments to scare people, particularly the Ben Gardner head coming out the bottom and all that stuff. So he was purposely trying to scare and shock people. Um, but but the second half of that movie isn't a horror movie. The second half of that movie is an adventure movie about three misfit guys that shouldn't ever be on a boat together who are, and that's the movie. Um, so so yeah, that's my long-winded answer of saying I don't know.
You don't know. So I just went to see it at the cinema because obviously it's the 50th
Yeah,
anniversary and it's been
yeah,
re-released. And you
yeah.
notice like loads of extra, because obviously I've only ever seen it on a TV screen before. So you notice
Right.
lots of extra details when you see it on a cinema
Yes.
screen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there's no and even still now, I've seen that movie, gajillion times. I can
Mm,
quote it to you. I can describe every single shot in detail. I know that movie like the back of my hand, but still, when Hooper goes down in the cage and the shark goes by and then it disappears, I'm
mm.
still waiting for that moment when the shark's going to come behind him and clash into I still get that little no, even though I don't know it's coming, and
Yeah.
I know exactly when it's going to come. It's still the atmosphere of that movie is just tremendous, and but I think what it is a testament of the reason the movie scares you is because the everything else is working so well. The script, the cast,
Mm,
you really care about those characters, and you really understand the function of the characters. There's tremendous filmmaking going on above the horror aspect of it that makes the horror aspect, which when you look at it is only in small bits in the movie,
mm.
but it's so effective because everything else is working so well. So, I look, it was a horror. It was certainly advertised as a horror. It was marketed as a horror. Back in the 70s, it was definitely considered a horror. It was considered one of the scariest movies ever made when it came out. Um, so, yeah, despite the fact that I think it's just a funny, massively enjoyable character adventure movie, uh, it was a horror. It was.
So I was going to ask you who your biggest inspirations are, and obviously we've already talked about Spielberg. Is there anybody else? I'm
Yeah, I
sure there's
mean,
lots of people, but
yes, there's plenty, but obviously a lot of people that I discovered as I get older that my
Mm,
heroes were their heroes, and you start looking at their
mm,
stuff, like Hitchcock and Orson Welles and David Lean and all those guys. So they're all up there in the top echelons. But growing up, the guys, Spielberg was definitely, yeah, he's got to be the greatest of all time. He's the most naturally gifted filmmaker there is. But
yeah.
I also, like I mentioned, Joe Dante, who did Gremlins and Inner Space and The Burbs and Matinee and The Howling. Um, he's absolutely 100% up there because of he's every bit the craftsman that Spielberg is, but just with this sort of slightly off the wall satirical edge to him, which and you watch his movies and you can't watch a Joe Dante movie without going, wow, this guy really loves 1950s sci-fi B movies
Mm.
because they're everywhere in his movies. And Robert Zemeckis, obviously, I think he's a genius. Uh, Obviously, the Back to the Future movies. Back to the Future, I think, is probably the greatest script ever written in terms
Mm.
of its construction. But a movie of his that was huge at the time, but people don't seem to talk about it so much anymore. But I keep reminding them that this movie is nigh on a masterpiece. Is Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a freaking masterpiece. It is a breathtaking piece of filmmaking. That and then obviously he did then he did the Back to the Future sequels. Then he did Death Becomes Her, which I think is an underrated
Love
movie.
that
Um,
movie. I'm doing a list of my spooky
yeah,
watches for October, and
right,
Death
yeah.
Becomes is on the
Death
list.
Becomes is a great one. Yeah, great
Yeah.
one for that. And yeah, I think it might be Bruce Willis's greatest performance
I
in
think
that
it's
movie.
great.
Yeah, I think he's fantastic in it.
Like Meryl Streep
But
and Goldie Hawn in
yeah,
it. Like you
yeah.
couldn't have cast anyone else who
Oh,
could have
yeah,
done
it's
it so
absolutely
well.
brilliant. Yeah, and they really send themselves up brilliantly. So
Mm.
yeah, that and then and obviously he did Forrest Gump, and then he did Contact, which I think is brilliant, and Castaway and all that stuff. So he's a filmmaker that I totally absolutely love and adore as well. And James Cameron, obviously, I'm a kid of the 80s.
Hmm.
Terminator, Aliens, and The Abyss is fantastic. Terminator 2, and as I said, True Lies, which I just as a pure action comedy, unrivaled. I think it's incredible. Um, but yeah, so predictably those guys. But then I start looking back on other people, and then I start looking at the work of Orson Welles, and I start looking at the work of Hitchcock. Massive Hitchcock nut. I've got pretty much all these movies,
Mhm.
and you know, and you see the techniques that these guys weren't just using; they were inventing to that my heroes then took and
Mm.
made their own things. So yeah, so I love all those guys. John Carpenter, obviously. I really started getting into his movies as a kid, and I love Halloween. The Thing, I think, is my favorite movie of his. That scared the crap out of me as a kid. But I have there's a movie of his that people always forget that might be my favorite movies. I'm not sure, and that's Christine that he
Right.
did based on a Stephen
Stephen
King
King.
novel about and I think that's a one. I love that film. I
I
think
haven't
it's just
seen that one.
oh okay. Well yeah, well we've got it. Next time you come over, we'll have to watch it.
Yes, we can have
Yeah,
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 definitely.
tremendous. Yeah.
So if you had to direct a reboot of anything, any classic, what would you choose? I was always tell you because I can't stand remakes. I always think if a
No,
film's good in the first place, you don't need to remake it. Like,
no,
if you remade Jaws, it's never going to be, do you know what I mean? And then if
no.
a film's not good in the first place, well, why bother?
Yeah.
But I mean, I've got to say, like the new I Know What You Did Last Summer, I enjoyed it as a reboot because it wasn't. I know Megan wasn't keen, but I know it was like it was kind of the same idea, somebody did something last summer and the revenge thing. But I think for me, it was more about the nostalgia of, I loved that movie when it came out and it had, some of the original cast in it and they didn't just kind of replace them and completely remake the movie. So I was kind
Mm.
of pleased about that. So how do you feel about the whole reboot thing anyway? And then if you had to
Oh,
make
in
one.
general, I'm very cynical about it
Mm,
now. Now of course, I grew up in an era in the 80s where there were plenty of remakes going on there,
mm,
but but they were filmmaker led. Like John Carpenter knew a way to redo The Thing for a modern audience.
mm,
So he developed that movie and made it. Uh, David Cronenberg absolutely knew a way to turn the concept of The Fly into a body horror
mm.
movie with modern, and these
Yeah.
guys, Frank Darabont had a great take on remaking The Blob. These guys, they took these dumb B movies from the
Mm,
50s, but knew how to take those concepts and make them work in the
mm,
modern, what was at the time the 80s, the modern age, using, but their take on it was from their love of the originals and their love of going, this stuff is very dated now, but I've got a way of bringing it
yeah.
back. Where that's not how remakes are done now. Remakes are literally studio execs looking down a list of what stuff have we got that some people might vaguely remember the name of now.
Yeah.
That's the decision that's made. It's not
Yeah.
filmmaker led at all. It's not someone who's got a passion to redo
No, it's
something.
definitely the
So
ones they
yeah,
know is going to make them some money.
yeah, no, exactly, and that's why they usually end up being trash. Now, funnily enough, the one the one that did it, I think, quite well, and it was quite a while ago now, but it was Wes Craven when he did Scream 4. Now
Mm,
you had the original three Scream movies,
yeah.
um, which were great, particularly the first one. I think
Yeah,
it's
that's one of my, it's one of
yeah.
the films that actually got me into loving horror.
Like, oh yeah, cool. Because and that was great, and that
Mm.
itself was a throwback to it was
Yeah.
there's this lineage, and everyone's looking back and doing their own interpretation of stuff.
Mm,
And Scream was an absolute brilliant sort of okay. These horror tropes have been done to death. Let's make a movie that uses those tropes, but knowingly and in a smart way, we
mm,
can play with the audience as to are we going to do the tropes or aren't we? And that's what it did, and it was great. But then you had the three Scream movies. They did done, job done,
hmm.
fantastic. Then years later, you hear they're doing Scream 4, and I was like, oh no, like that. I was pleasantly surprised at Scream 4 because that was about reboots. It
Mm.
was about it. And it literally has at the ending, Neve Campbell says, "Don't fuck with the original." She
Mhm.
literally says that before she blows her head off. And and I thought that that played with the concept of redoing stuff and rebooting,
Mm.
remaking stuff brilliantly. But that was a while ago now.
Yeah,
And so
I mean that
so
was
we did,
about, yeah, it was a while ago. 'Cause was that around
yeah,
10 years after the
yeah.
third Screams or something?
Yeah,
So
exactly. It was good. It was a good 10 years after,
yeah,
but it
and I
was
feel as well
yeah.
like for
Now
me,
we've had
because when I watched it, I was at high school, and obviously American high
yeah,
schools, they're a bit older at high school, but
yeah,
I watched it when I was at
yeah,
high school, and then it's like you feel like you've grown up with the characters. So when they come back
yeah.
and it's, 10 years after high school, I was there as well,
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly, and it played into that. It was a movie made for the original fans. It
Yeah,
wasn't made as in, hey, we're gonna get a new go for the new audience. It's like, no,
yeah,
make a movie that the original fans are going to get because we were playing with the tropes of horror movies
yeah.
there in the original trilogy. Now we're going to play with the tropes of rebooting horror movies,
Mm.
and we're gonna commentary on that. The new ones don't get it at all. The new ones think they're
No,
being clever.
they're just money makers.
They haven't come close to doing what that full screen did in
No.
terms of commentary on remakes.
But
So
I will still keep paying to watch them. That's the thing. As long as they keep doing them, I will watch them. So, they're doing what
yeah. Well,
they're getting what they want
exactly.
from
No,
it,
yeah,
but
yeah, they
they're
got to, and
not, they
they're
don't
relying.
hold up to, the
Yeah,
original.
yeah. I think after the last one, I probably won't. Like
Probably not.
I think the last one just did my head in so much. I'm just like, I'm done. I'm not. But we'll see. We'll see when
Yeah.
the time comes. Because sometimes
The
you're like, oh,
curiosity,
let's
if
go watch.
nothing else.
Yeah, well, sometimes there's nothing. If there's nothing better on, and
Yeah.
you're like, really, let's go watch a movie. Oh, the new Scream. Okay, let's go and see it. But that'll be it. But yeah, but it's in terms of yeah, so I'm very, very cynical, even though the concept of remaking something to me has been around for decades and decades and has been done very well. But it's just the way it's done now, the the intention behind it is just cynical and not
Mm.
a love of the original. I really want to show this to a new audience. Now, if I was to remake stuff, like it's like, why would I remake a classic? There's no
Mm.
classic that I would want to remake. Absolutely not. I wouldn't. Apart from, and and I don't know, this was on the cards, this was happening. Stephen Fry had written a screenplay for Peter Jackson to do a remake of the Dam Busters. Now that's something I would love to do.
Mm.
Retell a war story with homage to the original movie, but do it in a modern way with a modern sensibility to it to get a modern audience in, so they can
Mm.
learn about this stuff, but also have a visceral war movie experience as well. So something like the Dam Busters, which is a movie I love, but I could say we could do a remake of that, and we can make that really, really work, and do it in a way that makes people aware of the original, and get sort of tie it together. The only films that I would consider remake are films that didn't quite work that I think could work. Like I would love to remake The Black Hole, which is a movie that Disney did back in the dark Disney period where they came out with all these dark movies. And the Black Hole was their Star Wars ripoff, but it actually became a kind of a weird mashup of Star Wars and 2001 and and sort of like a serious sci-fi concept with silly robots floating around. And it's a fascinating concept, a fascinating idea, uh, and it's executed brilliantly in its design. The design and the look of everything is wonderful. Some of the effects are a little bit shoddy now,
Mm.
but just the script and the way they did it, it's just like you've missed the point. Now I love it, but I know that it's not very well done.
Right.
But I love it for a lot of other reasons, but that's a movie that I'd be like, and again, there've been rumors that they've been looking to remake it, and that would be a movie I would love to, start from scratch. Let's rewrite it. Let's really take that concept and mine it. And, the concept of it being this missing spaceship that's been missing for years, and that is rediscovered on the edge of the event horizon of a black hole, and it's there, and they go into it, and the whole crew is gone except for the main man in charge, this crazy scientist who wants to go into the black hole and find out. It's this whole existential sort of thing. Um, that that could be a great movie. Another movie that Disney did at the same time that was one of their dark movies is a movie that I wouldn't touch, which is a movie called Dragon Slayer, which didn't do very well.
Is
But
that the
the
one with Sean Connery?
No, no, no,
No.
no, no.
What am I thinking of?
That's Dragonheart.
There
That's
you go.
Dragonheart. Yeah.
Right.
That's a movie I would remake because again, I think the idea behind that is fantastic. Sean Connery was amazing, but the execution of that movie is just terrible. It's like it's got one of the most wonderful scores of all time, and I sit there going, this score deserved a better movie. Because because you watch that movie and it's just a bunch of actors in costumes wandering around. It's so unrealistic. It has so much non-verisimilitude. You're like, I don't believe this for a second. Whereas Dragon Slayer, which was made like 10 years before, like in 1981, which was on the first uses of Go Motion animation for the dragon. ILM did it. It's the greatest dragon ever put on screen, and it's a very dark movie with
Right.
this dragon that flies and breathes fire. First time a dragon like that had ever been put on screen, and it's just tremendous. That's a movie that didn't do very well. It has its flaws, but I
Mm.
wouldn't touch it because I would be like, I don't want to make a movie that redoes that dragon because that dragon
Yeah.
is perfection and I don't want to touch it. Whereas Dragon Heart, hell yeah, let's redo that because the concept is great. This dragon slaying knight and the last dragon teaming up to con people to that concept is wonderful. So I'd happily redo that in a better way. Maybe get Dennis Quaid in it because I like Dennis Quaid. I think you could do all that. It's just a movie that for me it's missed the mark and it could have been so good.
Mm.
So yeah, so there's all those kind of movies where you're like, if a movie works brilliantly, why would I remake it?
Mm.
I wouldn't know what to do. Because I have this thing now, it's like, with all these endless remake, all these and I get it, and it's not
Mm.
quite the same thing, but these endless reboots of, Superman, right? We're now on the fourth iteration of Superman in my lifetime. Um, and um, and they're always trying to find when they're redoing it, they're always trying to find the right way to do it. And the problem is, when Richard Donner did it with Christopher Reeve back in 1978, they got it right. They got it so perfect that anytime you try and do it now, you can't do that because you'll just be copying them. So it
Yeah.
means you have to, by definition, find the not quite so good way of doing it because they did it right and they did it
Yeah.
perfect. So you're always trying to find this other way. So you're always watching always watching, in my opinion, a failed attempt at trying to recreate what they did then, but you can't do what they did then. So you got to do something differently. But by pure virtue of that, it's just not going to be as good.
Yeah.
So I always come out of those movies going, what was the point? You know,
How do you feel
that's
about,
my problem.
obviously, we've talked about kind of reboots and things, but
Mm.
we talked about like Scream coming back kind of 10 years later. How do you feel about the films that are kind of now making sequels after long periods of time? Like, obviously, Top Gun I thought was incredible, but and that it's such a risk, isn't it, when you've got such a
Yeah,
classic film and you wait that long? Like you knew
yeah,
it was going to be good because it was Tom Cruise, and you knew there's no way he was going to do it if,
yeah.
if it wasn't going to be good. But and then like Beetlejuice, it was a massive.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the new one, but it's still not as good as the
No,
original.
nowhere near as good. No,
Hocus
but
Pocus disappointed me with their
yeah, I didn't
sequel.
even watch that. I heard terrible things about it. The Beetlejuice surprised me. I enjoyed that more than I thought I would. I think I was very cynical going. I know it was Tim Burton and that, but
Yeah.
he's, I love old Tim Burton, but recently I've not really dug his stuff. But so I wasn't that excited about Beetlejuice, and I was quite surprised at how much I actually quite
Mm.
enjoyed it. It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't, I enjoyed it because it was better than I thought it was.
I don't think
That's
it will
that's
have
the
that kind of iconic. I mean, obviously the character's already iconic, but like the first one is like just
yeah,
become this, huge classic. I don't think the second
yes.
one's got that about it.
Yeah, there's nothing quotable in the new one. I mean, the original one I can quote all the time.
Yeah.
There's so many funny lines in it. Well, I couldn't tell you any of the lines in the new
Mm.
one. I just know that it was okay.
Mm.
The yeah, this I think they're calling it legacy sequel in it, where they come back after
Right.
a million years and go, we're
Yeah.
not
I
remaking
mean,
it,
The
it's
Craft
actually a
did it.
sequel.
The
No,
Craft
yeah,
did, well,
yeah,
The Craft was pretty much a remake, but they did
yeah,
things almost exactly, some of them exactly the same, but not as
right.
well. And it was like
Yeah,
that's probably the worst one I've seen.
right. The craft, yeah, yeah.
Worse than Hocus
Some
Pocus.
of them are trying to have their cake and eat it.
Yeah.
The I think what we took, yeah, where's something like Top Gun worked because, well, it worked because everyone involved didn't everyone involved really worked hard to make it good.
Mm.
And that of course stems from Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise is obviously he's got the power to go, we're not going to do this movie unless we do it well,
Yeah.
and we're going to keep making it until we've made it well. He's like, he had the power to really, control that movie and make sure that it delivered what
Mm.
he knew the fans would want.
Yeah.
And that's what it did, and that's why it worked. So it was almost a filmmaker led thing. So like what I was saying with the old remakes, where they're so good because it's just someone with a vision knows how to retackle it. That's kind of what happened with Top Gun. No one, the studio wants it. I mean, the studio probably wanted a sequel to Top Gun back in 1987,
Mm.
88, 89, and then they gave up. There's no way they would have thought of doing a sequel to Top Gun, now. But someone had the idea, whether it was Tom Cruise himself or someone brought it. Someone had the idea, and they went as filmmakers and storytellers. They went, that'll work. That
Yeah.
that we can do, and hence it gets made. It's not a spreadsheet decision. It was a filmmaker decision,
Mm.
and that's why I feel lucky to have grown up in a period what I consider the golden age of the balance between art and craft and commerce being in sync. Because I know, filmmaking is an expensive thing to do. You need money. You got to make money. You got to be responsible for that money. You've got to try and make money. It's got to be a business. You've got to do that. I'm totally aware of that. But the business people back then, all they at least knew enough to go, we let the filmmakers make the product. They know how to make the good quality product. We then figure out how to sell that product. Joe Dante always talks about because when Gremlins was being made, no one was interested, no one cared. The only reason it got made is because Spielberg really liked it and wanted to make it.
Mm.
So it was kind of begrudgingly greenlit at Warner Brothers, and they're making it, no one's interested. And Joe Dante says, you can tell when no one's interested is because when they're reviewing dailies, in the cinema, the assistant of the assistant of the assistant exec is sitting in the back.
Mm.
He said, but then one day when after they'd shot the reveal of Gizmo, he said then they showed that in the dailies and that, and the little puppet comes up like that. He said he literally heard the murmuring behind him going, we can merchandise the hell out of that. We can, as the fireworks go off.
Got fireworks.
We can, we can. He said so they were making the movie, and the execs had no idea what they were going to do with this movie, but they just sat and watched what was happening. And as soon as they saw what the movie was, they were like, "Gotcha, we can sell this." And boom, and then and suddenly they got behind the movie, and that was it. But it was they let the filmmaker, do
Yeah.
his stuff and then figure out what to do. And that doesn't happen anymore. It's these movies are made all these superhero things, these Marvel things, all they're all spreadsheet made, man managed to an inch of their life. And I know people who work on that stuff, so I know what goes down on these movies, and it's a wonder that people aren't that excited by these movies anymore because they're just
Yeah.
they're just there. They just sort of flop on the screen and meander and then about 2 hours in, you're looking at your watch going, yeah, the final fight going to happen in a minute because I'm getting bored. And then it happens, and then you go home and then you forget about it. And that's $300 million spent
Yeah.
on it. It's bizarre. It's
Mm.
bizarre.
Well, I could talk to you about a film all day, but we are running out of time. So, lastly, what have you got coming up next? Or what would you like to plug?
Well, I don't know what to plug at the moment. Like I said, Video Killed the Radio Star is in post, and that's hopefully going to be finished by the end of the year and hopefully get released early next year. So keep an eye out for that. There's another movie of mine called Savage Flowers that has been doing festival work, and I'm not sure when the release of that is, but that should be releasing soon, if not the end of this year, the beginning of next year. So those two movies are in post, and then hopefully I've got some other movies to start shooting very soon. So we'll see.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You've been amazing. I'm going to let you have the rest of your Sunday back now. Have you got plans for the day?
I think we're going to walk the dog, and I'm just going to finish. We shot a proof of concept trailer for one of the movies that I'm hoping is going to go soon. So I'm just finishing the edit for that, which I'm going to present to the producer tomorrow. So
Amazing.
yeah, bit of work, bit of play, bit of walking the dog, and maybe we'll go watch a movie later. I don't know. We'll see.